Good morning, friends. I just want to say that I'm gonna play a lot of music written by Ukrainian composers for you, probably for a long time, for a month. Have I played before Ukrainian composers? Yes, I did many times because we usually don't say where they were born, right? We just play good music. So in here, just in solidarity with the beautiful nation of Ukraine, I just want to play more for you. And discover for myself also a lot of Ukrainian music. Mykola Lysenko, the first piece will be called. He was born in 1842 and died in 1912. He was a very famous composer in Russia and Ukraine. Wrote a lot of operas, pianist, ethnologist, studied a lot of Ukrainian. He was biology student at first, and then Russian Imperial Society gave him scholarship to study in Germany. Now he returned from Germany. Um, he started studying more Ukrainian. He started incorporating Ukrainian music into his music that he composed, and Russian society banned him for that. They didn't want him to incorporate Ukrainian music anyway. So he got some money to open actually music school in Ukraine. So this piece is called Elegia. Elegia is a piece of lament, nature, a little bit of tragic notes in this, which will be, I think, appropriate for this time when Kiev is almost in their hands now.
Thank you, Olga. Good morning, everybody. I'm Reverend Lynda Sutherland, minister here at First Parish Northborough, and I'm so glad to be here with you this morning. Whether you're joining us today in person or via Zoom, we welcome you, all of you, and invite you in as you are, as we are, with COVID hair, with masks, and everything else we bring with us this morning. Whether you're here today excited about spring and being back together, whether you're heartbroken and aching, whether you're worn and weary or confused or resigned or fiercely determined or all over the map, you are welcome. Our worship theme for March is renewing faith. What place does faith have in Unitarian Universalism, the religion we claim has questions for your answers? Are we really the church where you can believe anything you want? UUs often refer to their denomination as the living tradition. Today we'll be exploring questions of faith and what it means to be a UU. Our call to worship is called Renewing Faith from the Reverend Scott Taylor. He says, once a reporter asked A.J. Musty, "Do you really think you're going to change the policies of this country by standing out here alone at night in front of the White House with a candle?" Musty replied softly, "Oh, I don't do this to change the country. I do this so the country won't change me." How do we renew our faith when so much is falling apart? In these fragile days, we who assess life through the fire of reason find so little reason to trust that everything is going to be okay. The climate is collapsing. Racism so often morphs more than it is removed. Politics divide more than they unite. Don't tell us it's slowly getting better. Don't ask us to deny this feeling of despair that feels so real. On so many days, we've lost our hope for a better day. But we do long for it, don't we? Despite the setbacks and slowness, there remains something inside that continues to say, it can be better. More is possible. I need to believe goodness is real. It's a longing that lingers no matter what. Maybe that's what the preacher meant when he spoke of faith as a hunger for home. Maybe faith is more about remembering our longing for what we love and who we want to be, more than it is an act of restoring our trust that everything will work out well. Maybe the peacenik was right. We must remain faithful to the fight, not because change is guaranteed, but to ensure that we are not changed. Come, let us worship together. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from the Reverend Suzelle Lynch, and if you have a chalice at home, you're invited to light it along with us if you would like. We light our chalice this morning for renewal of our faith. Each time we light our chalice, we renew our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist faith. With the spark of a match, we make it new again, as fresh and surprising as the first day we encountered this spiritual community and realized we were home. We light this chalice for renewal of our faith. Our opening hymn this morning is Come, Come, Whoever You Are. And we're not yet singing here in the sanctuary. But please remember to mute if you are singing along at home. The text to this hymn is taken from Sufi poet Rumi. It says, Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. And then this isn't in the song, but Rumi adds, though you have broken your vows 1,000 times, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. And soon we hope we can sing like that in a service in person. You know, immediately after President Joe Biden introduced Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee to the United States Supreme Court at a White House event on Friday, the federal appeals court judge stepped up to the podium and appealed to the divine. I must begin these very brief remarks by thanking God for delivering me to this point in my professional journey. She said, my life has been blessed beyond measure, and I do know that one can only come this far by faith. In recognition of Women's History Month, we'll be lifting up women's stories in March. Today, we honor a woman who's become the first Black female nominated by a US president to serve on the Supreme Court, and one of the most experienced judges to be considered in our lifetime. You may think she had superior drive. Pardon me. You may think she had superior drive in order to get her to such a place in her life, but behind her blue chip credentials and impressive titles are something many American women recognize: career zigs and zags for the sake of her family. Our story this morning is called What Makes Ketanji Brown Jackson a Radical Nominee by Lisa Rubin. She says, in 2018, when my daughters were 7 and 4, I stared down the marble barrel of my white-shoed legal career. Lawyering while female always presented challenges, but litigating while parenting had become cruelly Sisyphean. The reward for good work was more work. A plum assignment and exposure to the right partners meant 7-day weeks in war rooms preparing for trials that might last 3 weeks or 3 months. At the office, I apologized for stolen hours attending therapy for my special needs child. At home, I felt guilt about the ways my unpredictable, unrelenting work schedule confused and shortchanged my kids. And in my press for a promotion, I had inadvertently slowed my husband's own burgeoning legal practice every time I had a trial or major hearing. And so exhausted, defeated, and convinced of my incompetence, I walked out of a prestigious law firm before grabbing the quintessential brass ring of law firm partnership. And I gave up on practicing altogether. I thought about the decision a lot when President Biden announced Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the Supreme Court. Had I seen a speech then U.S. District Court Judge Jackson gave around the time of my big quit, I wonder whether I would have continued to see professional excellence and parental responsibility as binary. I wonder whether I might have stopped blaming myself and instead blamed the structure of big law and its omnipresent billable hour. Judge Jackson's admirers have long marveled at how she presents the entire package. When Eleanor Holmes Norton, DC's delegate to Congress, introduced Jackson to the Senate Judiciary Committee, upon her 2012 nomination to the federal bench, she noted Jackson brought a top-of-the-mark academic background, practice in the criminal law, the civil law, and mediation, and in the directly relevant and important skill of sentencing. And that was before Jackson served 8 years on a federal trial court and roughly a year as a federal appeals court judge on the DC circuit, often seen as the country's second most significant court. Naturally, one might conclude that Judge Jackson, with both undergraduate and law degrees from Harvard and not one but 2 lower court clerkships before clerking for Justice Breyer, plotted her ascent meticulously, accumulating professional titles and expertise as methodically as she collected debate trophies as a Miami high schooler. But if Judge Jackson is to be believed, and as a former litigator and mother of 2, I find her entirely credible, one would be mistaken. Instead, Jackson characterized her path as more meandering, even accidental, or what pundits have labeled her professional diversity is the product of a professional odyssey of epic proportions. She was, as she told those Georgia law students, something of a professional vagabond, moving from place to place as my family needs and circumstances changed. And as she literally moved from job to job, she never checked either of 2 boxes traditionally found in the backgrounds of federal judges: law firm partner or prosecutor. Instead, she lasted only a short time at her first major law firm and expressly opted out of the partnership track at the second. Were her roles intellectually demanding? Without question, but were they physically depleting in the masochistic way lawyers often equate with achievement? Probably not. Judge Jackson's nomination to the court is historic, transformative, and yes, radical, but not in the way that critics say the radical left. No. What's radical about Judge Jackson's nomination is how, with patience and confidence in her aptitudes and interests, she took off professionally. In a field that rewards the always racing hare, she chose the way of the smarter, steady tortoise. Indeed, of her own stint as a young lawyer with a newborn and a husband finishing his surgical residency, she admitted, "I don't think it's possible to overstate the difficulty that many young women, and especially new mothers, face in the law firm context." She says, "If I was going to make the law my life work and also have a family, I needed to use my legal skills in a more predictable, more controllable environment. That was a realization for me. The understanding that if I was going to leave my baby and go to work outside the home, I needed to find a job that was not only fulfilling, but also compatible with the needs of my family." And it was that realization, not any calculus about how to get shortlisted for the court, that led Judge Jackson to her varied jobs. Last Friday, Ketanji Brown Jackson fulfilled her lifelong dream and cemented her place in history. That it was because of the unexpected zigs and zags in her career and family first ethos, and not in spite of them, that's not lost on this recovering lawyer. This story makes me wonder, how might we transform the world if we were to put as much emphasis on our relationships as we do on our careers? As I was preparing for this service, I got an email from Kara Stockelman, who said, "Could we have some sort of vigil or candle lighting in honor of Ukraine?" And so we put our heads together and we decided to add an element called Candles for Peace. And so I'm going to say a peacemaking prayer by Eric Cherry, and then we will light a few candles for peace. The history is complex, the politics are intense, the fear and anger are overwhelming, and the future is unclear. But glimpses of a hopeful vision will not be bombed into oblivion by anyone. In prayer, we call to mind the peacemakers, neighbors of differing faiths with different histories, with different politics, with different emotions, who find room for each other in their hearts, in their dreams, and in their lives. Those who hold firmly to a vision of peace and justice anywhere in the world, but especially today in Ukraine. Spirit of life and love be present with all who are suffering terribly from the violence in Ukraine. Lift up the hearts of those who fear and inspire courage among the peacemakers. Be present with political leaders, ensuring a retreat from violence and a procession toward the peace. Guide the hands of all those who are caring for the injured, the hungry, and the grieving, and open our hearts to compassion. Remind us of our complicity and responsibility, and lead us toward generous engagement, and move us always toward a vision of peace. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And so this morning, we light a candle for the children. And for the parents, and for those in harm's way, those shooting, those being shot, For the leaders, for those who suffer economically, for those who have to leave their homes, for those who make room for them. These are a few of the prayers in our hearts this morning. I have a short reading this morning from UU Minister Diana Carroll. This is the first Sunday of Lent in the Christian tradition. Reverend Carroll shares a distinctly UU perspective called But Lent. I would love to become the kind of person who makes sure the dishes are done every night so she can wake up in the morning to the peaceful welcome of a clean kitchen. I would love to become the kind of person who replies to every email the same day it arrives and keeps a neat, nearly empty inbox. I would love to become the kind of person who never picks at her cuticles or bites at her lips or chews at the insides of her cheeks until the dentist gives her a lecture about it. But Lent is not for trying to become someone I am not. It is for honoring the person I already am, my wholeness, my integrity, my belovedness. And so in this holy season, I will not strive for self-improvement. I will not seek to create new habits or to break the old ones. I will not squeeze myself into impossible expectations guaranteed to leave me angry and disappointed when I fail. Instead, I will do nothing but breathe, receiving the quiet gift of every inhale and every exhale. Receiving it even when I'm too busy or distanced to notice. Somehow, God is present in the breath, in the breathing, and from time to time, if I simply stop trying, I may be given the grace of knowing it. As part of our congregational faith practice, for many years, we have given away half of our Sunday morning offerings to an organization that does good in the world. Our half-plate recipient for March is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, the organization that started in World War II by helping refugees, and from which our chalice symbol has descended to us. In more than a dozen countries around the world, the UUSC fosters social justice and works toward a world free from oppression. Their innovative approaches and measurable impact in promoting economic justice, bolstering environmental justice, and protecting rights at risk are grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power, dignity, and rights. And if you click on the link that's in your Sunday morning perspective, the first thing you see when their website comes up is Aid for Ukrainians. So please give generously as you are able to support our UU ministry and work in the world. Donation information is in the chat for those of you at home as we enjoy this offertory.
For the offertory and postlude, I will play Reingold Glier, who is one of the well-known in the West composers of Russian, Ukrainian, German, and Polish descent. He studied in Moscow Conservatory composition, and then he taught in Kiev Conservatory and piano. Dreaming.
Thank you. A meditation for challenging times. Holy mystery, silent presence, uncertain bearer of the weight of it all. In these quiet moments, we listen. We listen for the maybe still breathing, perhaps still whispering, faintest sign of the universal good. We listen between the cacophony of distractions pulling us toward untruth and falsehood. We listen amid the shrill cries of desperation of "we've had enough," of "when will they stop killing my people," of "how much more will the waters rise," of "when will it be safe to return to my home," of "how much longer can I hang on." We listen and we wait through the tumult of these days. We seek assurance. We seek the fulfillment of a promise made to ourselves, a promise made to those who have been stretched to call, we have been stretched to call neighbor, a promise written and enshrined and yet unfulfilled. Help us, abiding mystery, to hang on, to hold on when all is in question, when all is in doubt. Help us to stay firm to our own commitments and our own promises. Lead us back into connection, back into the bonds of humanity that help us to know each other as beloved. May we continue listening. May we keep watch. May we beckon love and justice and mercy with our own whispers, with our shouts, with our cries, until all know themselves part of the circle of love. Amen.
Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be a house of heaven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of freedom, guardian of dignity and worth held deep inside. lives abide in reverence here. Let this be a house of all creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May vision for children be a common theme. Let this be a house of myth and lore and legend, all trove of ancient story and cradle of our tender dreams. Let this be a house of peace. 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 Let this be a
Sorry we didn't get to hear the end of that here in the sanctuary. Sometimes the experience is better in person, sometimes it's better at home. One of my favorite shall I wait a minute, Stephanie, for folks at home? Okay. Technical difficulties, please stand by. You know what? Why don't I just turn on my Zoom microphone on my computer? No? You're about ready? We're good for audio. All right. All right, thank you. One of my favorite books is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've read it at least 12 times, all the way through. I want to quote a little piece of that from I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could it end happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow, even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those the stories those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. Frodo says, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" Sam says, "That there's some good in the world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for." The Reverend Jake Morrill says in a sermon called "What on Earth is Worth Saving," says, on Monday in the rural counties north of Knoxville, everything was on fire, or seemed like it. A dry yellow fog settled into the valley. Tennessee state forestry officials reported 20 wildfires. Most of the fires, they said, were from arson. On Election Day 2016, there was an air alert. The fires went on. One burned down 100 acres of woods. Who would have gone and done something like that? What made them want to go out and lash out and burn it all down? What fueled such great anger? What made these lost souls not know what on earth is worth saving? A friend said, maybe arson wasn't the only reason for all the harm done. Maybe some was from carelessness. This morning, where I live, the smoke has cleared away, but in our nation, a bitter fog has settled in, making it hard to breathe, hard to see. Countless of us greet the day still in something like shock, wondering what led so many in our democracy to want to go out and lash out and burn it all down, wondering how much could be traced back to carelessness, wondering how many lives are at risk and how on earth we will live. 5 years later, 6 years later, here we are in the same boat. In the book of Esther, in the Hebrew scripture, Esther finds herself at a similar pivotal moment. King Xerxes, also called Ahasuerus, ruler of the Persian Empire, is reckless, extravagant, and not all that bright, endangering all who live under his erratic rule. In his dull vanity, Xerxes sentences all the Jews in the kingdom to death. At this moment of peril, Esther's cousin Mordecai appeals to her for her help, because Esther, who's Jewish herself, enjoys a position of privilege in the empire. She's reluctant to risk it, but Mordecai tells her it's not certain in the coming wrath that her privilege will save her. Help, he concludes, might possibly come from somewhere else. But he says, who's to say whether you've come to this place and position for such a time as this? Upon hearing this question, Esther doesn't leap into action. She doesn't issue a statement. She doesn't post a quip on Facebook. She knows what's asked of her is nothing less than to risk her safety, her life. So she asks her people to fast and pray with her, and she takes time to prepare herself for what her life now requires. That's what time it is for all of us, all together. Time to reflect, to be still, to feel all the feelings, and to prepare ourselves. Who's to say whether, in fact, we were made for a time such as this? I contend that engaging with, even wrestling with my Unitarian Universalist faith is one of the things that has prepared me for the soul work required by the world right now. It brings me back to reality time and time again. We are the church of the open mind, as our kids say, of the loving heart, and of the helping hands. That means that as a UU, I must bring curiosity and willingness to learn. Our Unitarian Universalist faith is a living faith. We know that as humans, we are always growing and changing and learning more about ourselves and the world. As a denomination, we have gone from one symbol to many. We're always, beg your pardon, we don't even try to convince ourselves that we have the answers. In fact, the Reverend Tony Larson says, you should not be a Unitarian Universalist if you want all the answers, because we don't even know all the questions. In fact, when someone says, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? Some people will answer, well, that's the place where you can go believe anything you want. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot of things we don't believe in. We don't believe in limiting people because of their race or color, for example, or restricting people on the basis of gender. We don't believe in excluding people because of disability or denying rights to those whose personal preference or lifestyle is different from the norm, so long as they are not infringing on other people's rights. We don't believe in destroying the environment. We don't believe that injustice and poverty are just unfortunate accidents that we don't have responsibility to do anything about. In fact, one of the basic underlying beliefs of most UUs is that we do have the responsibility to help right the wrongs of the world, to bless and nurture, and above all, do no harm. As Universalist minister Hosea Ballou used to say, we spell God with 2 O's and devil without the D. Good and evil. We side with love. We hold that spiritual maturity pays attention to results. Does this lead to more health, justice, and love? We feel we are responsible to bless the world and our fellow beings, to be the hands of divine love in the world. I think heaven can be a place on earth because we together can make it more and more so. Once we learn to do this, to wrestle out life's challenges in a way that in ways that preserve life, dignity, and agency, and to effectively pass that on to each new generation, that's the best chance of peace and stability on this planet. As Lao Tse said, if there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there's to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there's to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there's to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there's to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Sometimes faith comes down to resolving to preserve what is good and life-giving. resolving to resist that which is destructive, resolving to move forward the best we know how, resolving to keep faith with ourselves and with others, to live with as much integrity and compassion as we can, resolving to bring our whole selves into community so that we can together be transformed into people of peace. Let us resolve then that we will continue to make our beloved community a home of peace, a home for truth-telling, a home of compassion, a house where our faith is always being renewed and transformed. May it be so. I'm going to encourage everybody in the coming week to keep track of your emails that come to you on Tuesdays and Fridays. There's important information and also inspiration in there. And on the Tuesday Circle Care email, all through March, be watching for articles, short videos, and other ways to deepen, widen, and wrestle with your faith. This afternoon, the youth group is going to the Central Rock Gym. There's some signs of life. I also wanted to let everybody know something I just found out, and that is that there are 5 families who have inquired about attending here, families with children. And so we're going to be putting out a plea for anyone who can help in a nursery, and try to get things going again. And I also have to mention that we're looking for a volunteer to work on the audio visual so that Dennis can have a break once in a while. And so, all right, that's all of our announcements this morning. And now I will leave you with this blessing. Coming Home by Fred Lamotte. When times are dark, the way becomes clear. Trust in your breath. Rest in your heart. Bow to the stranger. This is the gospel of astonishment. If we are completely lost, we come home to each other.